What if I told you that at this very moment, someone is watching your every move, and that their future may depend on a simple act of kindness that no one saw? For Leo, son of cleaning lady Donna Maria, that moment arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. While powerful adults discussed multi-million-dollar deals, a 10-year-old boy was about to remind them of a lesson they had forgotten. In a luxurious lobby among CEOs and international professors, a misspelled name tag would become the company's most important character test, and the least expected person would have the courage to correct it. The main hallway shone as if the floor were a mirror. The glass panels reflected hurried passers-by and gleaming name tags. Leo walked a step behind his mother, tightening his worn shoelaces. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and furniture polish mingled in the air. On the tip of his tongue were questions he didn't have the courage to ask. Donna Maria had a small, attentive gait, almost without making a sound. She carried a bucket, cloths, and the kind of care that only trained hands possess. She reminded Leo to stay close, but not to touch the expensive things. "It'll only be until I finish the salon, son. Just stay quiet here." He nodded with his eyes, curious like a cat in front of a light. In the auditorium, voices in different languages danced across the ceiling. Colorful signs read, "Welcome," "Bienvenue," "Welcome," "Welcome." The chairs, lined up, awaited stories of travel and new accents. Leo glanced at the secretary's desk, which was full of papers and pens. They looked like hidden treasures in plastic trays. A giant screen displayed the event schedule. "Welcome to the new international teachers," it read at the top. The CEO's name appeared in sober, almost cold lettering. Leo repeated the name softly, testing the sound with his teeth. He wondered who could possibly own such a stern signature. The teachers arrived in groups, laughing, adjusting their name tags. Some were taking photos, others were peeking at a map of the building. There were woody perfumes, citrus colognes, and the smell of rain on clothes. A young woman from HR was aligning ribbons and distributing folders. Everything had rhythm, like a rehearsed orchestra. Leo remembered his schoolyard, noisy and rough. There, his name had already been twisted into a joke. Leo Liao, Leo, Lele, and laughter followed. The memory hurt, like a stone inside a shoe. He took a deep breath, trying to forget the bad joke. On the other side of the room, a thin man stared at the name tag. She had a serene face and thin-rimmed glasses and a polite gaze. The name tag hung crooked, black letters on a dull white background. "Lord," it was written, turning respect into a stumbling block. The man pursed his lips and lowered his eyes, ashamed. Leo felt a pang that wasn't his, and yet it was. The mistake seemed small, but it glaringly accentuated the elegant room. "It's just a matter of flipping the words," he thought, with the urgency of the obvious. The professor touched the plastic as if apologizing for existing. The boy lowered his head, and a simple courage ignited within him. Behind the counter, under a stack of leaflets, there was cardboard. There were also tapes, clips, pens, and a pair of blunt-tipped scissors. Leo looked around, absolutely certain that no one would see. He imagined the letters firm, the strokes meticulous, respecting the name. "Mr. Lee," she spelled out silently so as not to make a mistake first. High up on the building, cameras blinked like daylight stars. A monitor displayed images from different angles of the same life. The man in the gray suit watched without actually watching, an old custom. Between reports, his attention was drawn to the boy with the worn-out sneakers. a small scene began to rival the weight of the numbers. If this story has already touched your heart, imagine what's still to come. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications because the most beautiful lessons are yet to come. The professor took a breath, adjusting the ribbon on his upside-down name tag. He saw his distorted reflection in the acrylic and in the English of others. He gave a forced smile when someone greeted him without saying his name. She swallowed the words she wanted to teach so as not to bother anyone. The room vibrated, but his chest felt like an empty room. Leo approached slowly, gauging the path as if it were a game. In his hand, a rectangular piece of cardboard with round, clear letters. His heart was pounding, trying to burst out of his chest. If I make a mistake, I'll run, he thought, with calculated courage. But the legs decided to stay and finish the crossing. In front of the teacher, the boy held up his makeshift name tag. "I made it for you, young man," she said, almost in a whisper. The man read slowly, as if savoring a rare dish. "Mr. Lee," he repeated, and the sound fit like a lid on a jar. His eyes gleamed like two headlights in a foggy night. "Thank you," said the professor, in shy but beautiful Portuguese. He placed his hand on his chest, a gesture that transcends any language. He bowed slightly, returning the respect he had received. Leo smiled, unsure where to store so much joy. The small plaque seemed too big in small hands. Donna Maria, watching the scene from afar, felt a chill run down her spine. He thought about the rules, the warnings, the employees-only signs. He ran toward the counter, gesturing with his eyes, asking permission to pass.
"Leo, what have you done?" she said, her voice trembling and low. The boy shrugged, not wanting to disappoint the world. "It was just a name tag, Mom. It was written wrong," he explained. "Names are serious business, aren't they?" he added, seeking refuge in the obvious. The teacher tried to help, saying that everything was all right. "Your son did the right thing, the very right thing," she insisted, her hand still on her chest. But the mother saw bills, rules, and the shadow of dismissal. On the monitor panel, the scene gained a few more seconds. The man in the suit leaned forward, as if listening more closely. The routine of reporting was left hanging by a thread. He enlarged the image, zooming in on the tiny gesture. An old word, belonging, came crashing down on his memory. The HR lady noticed the new name tag and froze. "Who authorized this?" he asked, startled by the gear. Leo was about to speak, but the teacher raised his hand first. "I authorize respect," he said, and the phrase hung in the air. For a moment, no one knew what to answer. Donna Maria pulled her son aside to the corner of the hallway. "Son, I could lose my job because of this." Leo bit his lip, feeling the weight of the adult on his chest. I wanted to return the badge to silence, as if that were possible. But the professor approached, asking to talk. "Your name is Leo, right?" he asked, pointing to the new name tag. "My name is important to me, just like yours." Leo nodded, remembering the jokes at school and the burning sensation. "When they speak incorrectly, it feels like I become smaller," he confessed. The teacher smiled sadly because he understood without a dictionary. The HR lady called the mother aside for a quick minute. The audience continued with their script as if nothing was happening. Leo stood there, hesitant, holding his breath, hesitating between yes and no. Up above, the CEO closed the spreadsheet and breathed a sigh of relief. It was as if the entire building was waiting for a decision without an agenda. That day, the sound of the vacuum cleaner and the murmur of the hallways seemed distant. Leo sat on a bench in the lobby, swinging his feet in the air. The professor's original name tag, the one that was wrong, now lay dormant in his pocket.
She ran her fingers over the inverted letters, feeling the strangeness of something so simple. It was a piece of plastic, but it held both shame and courage.
Dona Maria finished her work more quietly than usual. Curious glances followed her as she mopped the floor. Each step seemed to echo louder than it should have. She prayed silently so that her boss wouldn't find out what had happened, but the son's name was already starting to circulate by word of mouth. Leo, not understanding the seriousness of the situation, returned to the secretary's counter. All that remained was a piece of blue cardboard and a pen without a cap. He began to absent-mindedly draw a smiling sun and a new name tag. She wrote his name with firm, colorful letters. For the first time, he liked seeing it like this: complete, beautiful, right. On the other side of the building, Mr. Augusto watched the scene again. He asked the secretary to replay the video of the boy with the teacher. He couldn't say why, but that image captivated him. The gesture wasn't about rules, it was about something that couldn't be taught. A badge and a clean heart, he murmured, without realizing he was thinking aloud. Leo's mother's phone rang. It was HR asking her to come up. "Mrs. Maria, the principal wants to speak with you and the boy." She felt her stomach churn, her hands sweating inside her gloves. Leo noticed the fear on her face and wanted to hold her hand, but her mother looked at him firmly. "Don't say anything there, understand?" In the elevator, the silence was a room full of questions. The numbers on the panel rose slowly as if testing courage. Leo looked at their reflection in the mirror. She was tense. He was curious. She thought of Professor Lee and the colorful name tag in his small hands. She wanted the men to know that what he felt wasn't regret. When they arrived at the executive floor, everything smelled of expensive perfume. The walls were adorned with pictures bearing phrases in English and framed in black. The secretary made them wait, without smiling, without saying a word. The clock on the wall was moving more slowly than usual. Leo could hear his heart beating along with the ticking. Meanwhile, Professor Lee walked down the hallways wearing his new name tag. Several colleagues commented, laughed at the previous mistake, and praised the gesture. He didn't know that the boy and his mother were being summoned. The glow of the right name made him feel whole again. It was just a piece of paper, but it restored his dignity. In the CEO's office, the air felt thicker than usual. A lit lamp cast elegant shadows on the glass walls. When the door opened, Dona Maria and Leo entered slowly.
The man in the gray suit looked up from the monitor, and for a moment, the rigidity of the entire company seemed to breathe differently. "You may take a seat, please," said the CEO in a calm and firm voice. Dona Maria hesitated, her fingers twisting the cloth she was still holding. Leo looked around. Picture frames with awards, trophies, and diplomas were everywhere. It was a world that smelled of success and distance. The man in the gray suit looked like a breathing statue. "You're Leo, right?" he asked, breaking the heavy silence. The boy nodded, his hands sweating in his lap. "I saw what you did this morning," the CEO continued. Dona Maria tried to explain herself, distressed, offering apologies in advance. But the man raised his hand, asking her to stop. "Don't worry, Mrs. Waria. Your son did nothing wrong." Her eyes widened, not understanding what she was hearing. In fact, he did something that many adults have forgotten how to do. Leo blinked, confused, unsure whether it was a reprimand or a compliment. The CEO took a deep breath, and the tone in the room changed. "Do you know what empathy is?" he asked, resting his elbows on the table. Leo replied without thinking. It's about putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right? The man smiled for the first time in months. Exactly, kid. And you did it better than any lecture. Donna Maria lowered her head, moved, relieved, and proud. The CEO stood up and went to a shelf nearby. He picked up an old, dusty, and forgotten gold badge. That was mine back when I was just an employee. He twirled the name tag between his fingers thoughtfully. Someone called me by the wrong name on the first day. I've never forgotten it. There was a silence for a few seconds, dense, full of memories. The man looked at the boy again with a serene gaze. You reminded me of something important, Leo. Very important. Donna Maria discreetly wiped away a tear with the back of her glove. That was the kind of recognition that no salary could buy. I want to propose something, said the CEO, flashing a genuine smile. I want to create a project here, a program for the children of employees. Leo's eyes widened in surprise at what he was hearing. And I want to start with you, Leo. Do you want to participate?
The boy nodded, unable to say a word.
On the other side of the building, Professor Lee was giving a welcome lecture. He didn't know that the simple gesture would take flight upstairs. While he was talking about the beauty of languages, something made him smile. In every language, the name comes before the world, he told his colleagues. And, without knowing it, she was talking about exactly what was happening. On the way out, the CEO accompanied the two to the elevator. The mother thanked them, still confused by so many changes. Leo looked at the golden badge in the man's hand and smiled. "Can I make a new one for you too?" he asked, with childlike sincerity. The CEO laughed, for the first time in a long time, a genuine laugh. The clock on the wall showed almost noon when the CEO returned to the room. The screens in front of him displayed fragments of the company in motion. Employees laughing, cleaners cleaning, the glow of a vibrant corporation. But Augusto's eyes kept returning to the same video, the boy and the teacher. A simple gesture that now throbbed in his mind like an echo. He paused the image at the exact moment Leo smiled. The purity of a child's gaze seemed to illuminate the cold environment of the cameras. Augusto realized he hadn't seen anything like this in the company for a long time. That honesty without calculation, without seeking approval. Perhaps greatness has hidden itself in the little things, he thought. On the ground floor, Leo held his mother's hand tightly as they returned to work. She still feared there might be a sudden turn of events. The colleagues approached, curious, whispering amongst themselves. "I heard the director called you in and gave you praise," they said. But Donna Maria preferred not to believe it until she saw the end of the story. While cleaning the main hallway, she crossed paths with Professor Lee. He took his new badge off his chest and showed it off proudly. "Your son, very intelligent, very kind-hearted," she said in broken Portuguese. Her eyes welled up with tears, unsure of what to say. She simply smiled, her soul at peace for a brief moment. In the CEO's office, a new file was opening on the computer. Title: Name and Value Project, Pilot Proposal. He typed slowly, each word weighing more than annual reports. For the first time, the document didn't talk about profit, but about legacy. Something inside him whispered that this was what his empire was missing. Leo spent the rest of the day helping his mother collect cups and cloths. Each thank you he received from the employees sounded different now. The boy didn't understand, but he sensed that something had changed.
And deep down, he wished that all the name tags in the world were correct. Because for him, the name was the beginning of the whole story. Augusto finished work late, but with the rare lightheartedness. On the way home, he remembered his own distant son. Years without speaking, without understanding each other's language, He thought about calling but saved the impulse for tomorrow. Perhaps that was what Leo had awakened in him, the desire to try. At the entrance, the security guard commented with a laugh, "Nice gesture from the boy, right, Doctor?" Augusto simply nodded, glancing at the gold badge tucked away in his pocket. "Yes," he replied. "Sometimes the future arrives with poster board and markers." The security guard didn't understand, but smiled back, unknowingly complicit. The elevator doors closed and the CEO's reflection looked like a different man. The following morning, the hallway seemed brighter than usual. But inside Doña Maria, there was a whirlwind of fears. Had they talked too much? Was the compliment a trap? The world of bosses was full of nice words and harsh consequences. She preferred the firm ground of soap and a damp cloth. Leo, excited, woke up before his alarm clock. He wanted to see Professor Lee, to know if he still wore his name tag. He drew another one at home with colorful ribbons and his mother's name. "For you, Mom, so that no one forgets that you are important too." Doña Maria cried softly, disguising it with a hurried kiss. In the cafeteria, colleagues whispered about the new program that the director was going to create. "Mentoring for the children of employees," they said, between coffee breaks and out of curiosity. Some laughed, others doubted. This won't last. But there was hope in the words that escaped between the laughs. Something was changing, even if no one quite understood why. During the break, Professor Lee went to the staff area. She was carrying a white envelope and a smile. "A letter for the boy," she said, handing it to Doña Maria. Inside, there was a note written in careful handwriting. "Your gesture taught me what respect is. I will never forget it." Leo read the letter several times, his heart pounding in his chest. It was as if he had won an invisible medal made of kindness. She showed it to her mother, who tried to hide her pride behind a sigh. "Son, the world doesn't always understand these things. But Mr. Lai understood, right?" he replied, smiling. The sound from the loudspeaker interrupted the conversation. "Mrs. Maria, please go to the principal's office." She felt her whole body go cold. "Not again." Leo squeezed her hand, repeating softly, "Everything will be all right." And for the first time, she wanted to believe it could be true. On the way to the elevator, Leo's new badge swung around his neck. Each step was a mixture of fear and hope. He wondered if Mr. Augusto still remembered him, and deep down, she hoped that the CEO's smile hadn't been a dream. The doors opened with a soft, promising sound. Up there, Augusto gazed out the panoramic window overlooking the city. The sun reflected off the buildings as if the world were clean. The secretary announced, "Mrs. Maria and the boy are here." He adjusted his tie, took a deep breath, and smiled. "Please ask them to come in. We have a lot to talk about." The hallway leading to the director's office seemed like another world, made of silence and glass. Each step Donna Maria took echoed like a confession. Leo was walking a little behind, looking at the paintings on the walls. Faces of founders, slogans in English, phrases about success. But the boy thought, success shouldn't smell of fear. When they entered the room, Mr. Augusto greeted them standing. His smile was different, gentle, almost human. "Good morning, Mrs. Maria. Good morning, Leo," he said, pointing to the chairs. She answered in a trembling voice, her hands clasped in her lap. The boy simply observed, trying to understand the atmosphere of the place. "Do you remember what happened yesterday?" the CEO asked. Donna Maria nodded, swallowing slowly. "Well then, I spent the night thinking about that." Leo lowered his gaze, thinking he was about to get scolded, but the man smiled. and the unexpected happened. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did, Leo. The boy blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. You didn't just correct a name tag, you corrected an attitude. The CEO rested his hands on the table, his voice firm but gentle. You reminded me that people have names, and names deserve respect. The silence that followed was filled with emotion and surprise. Donna Maria was breathing with difficulty, trying to contain her emotion. Augusto continued, I decided to create a program here at the company, a project that will help the children of our employees. And I want to start with you, Leo. What do you think of this idea? Leo looked at his mother, seeking permission with his eyes. She nodded shyly, unable to speak. I don't know what I would do, the boy replied. The CEO leaned in, looking at him closely. Keep doing what you already do. Observe, feel, and respect. On the way out, the atmosphere was different. The secretary offered candy, and the elevator seemed lighter. Donna Maria, still in shock, squeezed her son's hand. Son, do you understand what happened? She asked. More or less, he replied, smiling. But it was a good thing, wasn't it? Meanwhile, downstairs, Professor Lee was writing an email. He was telling the board how the boy's gesture had touched him. In my country, a person's name is their soul, he used to say. Each word was a bridge between cultures and hearts, and that email would soon find its destination in the right hands. The following afternoon, the company seemed to be in a holding pattern. Comments circulated from room to room, fueled by curiosity and astonishment. The CEO had called a meeting with HR and some directors. Nobody knew the exact reason, only that it had to do with the boy. And where there is mystery, there is also judgment. The meeting table gleamed under the ceiling lights. Reports, charts, and spreadsheets were piled up. But in the center lay something simple, the name tag made by Leo. Colorful, made of cardboard and pen, it stood out from the adult world. And that was precisely why no one could take their eyes off him. Gentlemen, the CEO began, this is more than just paperwork. It's a reminder. The company exists because of people, not the other way around. Some exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others pretended to take notes without understanding the human tone of that speech. Augusto wasn't speaking like a boss. He was speaking like someone waking up. One of the directors cleared his throat. But it's just a name tag, sir. The CEO's gaze fell upon him, calm but firm. And that's precisely why it's great. Because nobody expected anything.
The words fell like soft stones into deep ponds. Even the noise from the air conditioner seemed to decrease. At that same moment, Professor Lee appeared at the classroom door. She wore her new badge and had a grateful look on her face. "Can I say something?" he asked, in still hesitant Portuguese. "This boy reminded me why I teach. Because every name has a soul." The silence that followed was the most beautiful in the company's history. The CEO asked everyone to pay attention to the teacher. "Thank you, Mr. Lee. Your words concluded the meeting better than I could." He closed his laptop, pushed the folders aside, and stood up. "Let's give new meaning to what we do here." And he left the room, leaving Leo's name tag on the table, like a flag. In the hallway, he found the boy and his mother waiting. "Come in, Leo," she said, opening the door for the boy. All the directors were still there, silent, watching. Leo entered slowly, not understanding the weight of the moment. The cardboard name tag awaited him on the table like a trophy. "He's the one who did it," said the CEO, looking at the group. "And he reminded us of something we'd forgotten, the value of a name." Leo smiled, half shy, half proud. The adults awkwardly began to clap. The sound filled the room, not with formality, but with truth. As he was leaving, Professor Lee knelt before the boy. "You gave me a gift, my little friend," he said emotionally. "And now I want to give you another one." He took a small golden pen from his pocket and handed it to Leo. "So that you never stop writing what is right." The following days brought murmurs to the glass walls. News of the Employees' Children program was spreading throughout the company. Some thought it was beautiful, others mocked it under their breath. "Has the company turned into a daycare now?" a manager joked. But there were eyes gleaming discreetly among the disbelieving faces. Augusto, in his office, observed everything patiently. "Did you know that change doesn't happen without resistance?" On his monitor, he read and reread Professor Lee's email. "Respecting someone's name is respecting their history." That phrase hammered in his head like a mantra.
In the cleaning sector, the atmosphere was different, a mixture of hope and fear. Donna Maria had become a silent reference point. Some colleagues looked at her with admiration, others with envy. She simply went about her work, quietly, but with a different attitude. Now she walked upright, like someone who was finally being seen. Leo would come home every day after school to wait for his mother. The HR staff greeted him, the security guard always smiled. There was something new about his name, a kind of curious respect. He was still the same simple boy, but the world around him had changed. And, perhaps without realizing it, she began to inspire other small gestures. One afternoon, Augusto called a group of directors together for a meeting. "I want this project to be not a favor, but a culture." His tone left no room for resistance. "I want the children of our employees to learn here, and I want them to learn what Leo taught me, humanity." An older director stood up, skeptical. "Sir, that sounds good in theory, but it's not strategic." Augusto looked at him, calm but firm. "Strategy is about taking care of those who sustain what we have built." The silence that followed was one of surrender and respect. Meanwhile, in the cafeteria, Professor Lee was having lunch with Donna Maria and Leo. "In China, a name is a seed," he said, smiling. "It is planted at birth and grows with every good deed." Leo listened, enchanted, touching the golden pen he had received as a gift. She wanted to grow up and write her own name beautifully too. At the end of the workday, Augusto personally went down to the ground floor. The employees exchanged surprised glances at each other, taken aback by the unexpected visit. He greeted the cleaning crew, something he had never done before. And when he passed Leo, he stopped, put his hand on his shoulder and said, "Thank you for reminding me what's essential, kid." The next day, the company seemed to have a different pulse. The cold air conditioning has given way to something more human. Posters with the title Name and Value Project began to appear. Some carried phrases about empathy, others stories of overcoming adversity. And at the heart of it all, the story of the boy and the teacher. Augusto asked Professor Lee to speak at the general meeting. The auditorium was packed, serious faces, curious faces, skeptical faces.
The man walked up onto the stage with slow but steady steps. In his hand, he held the cardboard badge, the original one, made by Leo. There was total silence when he began to speak. "In my language, name means beginning.
When people say things that are wrong, it feels like my story gets distorted." He held up the badge delicately, as if it were made of crystal. A boy corrected mine, and, without knowing it, he corrected something in all of us. The phrase floated like a prayer among the audience members. Dona Maria's eyes filled with tears at the back of the room. Her son, sitting beside her, was nervously wringing his hands. The CEO watched, visibly moved, trying to hide the glint in his eye. The entire company seemed to breathe together for the first time. The sound of applause came slowly, growing until it became a wave. When the applause died down, Augusto took the microphone. "Today, this badge is a symbol of who we want to be." He displayed the name Mr. Lee projected on the giant screen behind him. Respecting the name is respecting the soul, and every soul matters. Some cried, and others, ashamed, looked at the ground. Outside, journalists were documenting the campaign. The video of the speech would be published on the company's social media channels. But more than that, it would win the world, touching the hearts of strangers. "A child reminded adults what respect is," the headline read. Leo, upon seeing the video, smiled without fully grasping the magnitude of the achievement. At home, he asked his mother, "Mom, is this fame?" She laughed, drying her hands on her apron. "No, son, this is an example." The boy thought for a moment and replied, "I think it's better this way." And she agreed, embracing him with pride and tenderness. The following week, letters arrived from schools and businesses. Everyone wanted to know about this Name and Value project. Augusto read each message, moved and surprised. "Look what your son has started," he would say to Dona Maria. And she would humbly reply, "It was just a name tag, sir." But he nodded his head with conviction. "No, Dona Maria, it was a lesson." And looking at the boy playing with the golden pen, he added, "Some leaders are chosen unexpectedly, and that's what makes them special." That day, the CEO realized the name Leo now also had power.
The sun streamed through the large windows of the 10th floor, painting the floor gold. Augusto arrived early, lighter than usual, without his usual gray suit. Instead of a tie, a discreet smile and a worn leather briefcase. Inside, there was the document he had rewritten during the early morning hours. Title: Name and Value Program, Inclusion, Education, and Humanity. In the auditorium, everyone was eagerly awaiting the special meeting. Directors, teachers, staff, and even the security guards were there. No one knew what would happen, but everyone felt something different. When Augusto stepped onto the stage, the murmuring subsided instantly. His voice sounded firm, but with a new sweetness that no one knew existed. Today we are making official something that began with a simple gesture. He held up the colorful name tag that Leo had made with his own hands. This role reminded us that everyone deserves to be called by their name. The audience watched him silently, touched by the simplicity of the symbol. And that's why we created the Name and Value Project, starting now. Leo, in the front row, widened his eyes in surprise. I didn't expect to be part of something so big, nor to see my badge on the big screen. Dona Maria, standing beside him, breathed a mixture of pride and disbelief. Professor Lee smiled, discreetly filming with his cell phone. Augusto stepped down from the stage and went over to the boy. You're going to be the first participant in the project, Leo. The microphone picked up the boy's surprised breath. But it's not a prize, it's a learning experience, and you're going to help me learn too. Leo nodded shyly, holding the badge like an invisible trophy. The audience applauded, and the sound resembled a collective embrace. After the event, journalists surrounded the trio, the CEO, the professor, and the boy. The cameras captured smiles, tears, and genuine energy. Donna Maria, confused, hid behind the audience. But someone gently pulled her forward. It was Augusto himself. "Madam, none of this would exist without your silent example." At that moment, something broke within the rigidity of the company. It wasn't a structure, but a custom, that of not seeing the other. The employees applauded the woman who cleaned the hallways every day, and she, shyly, with tears in her eyes, waved with the cloth still in her hand. That gesture was a portrait of the new world that was beginning there. At the end of the event, Augusta went back onto the stage. "If we want to teach languages, let's start with the most universal thing: respect." The words echoed off the walls and in hearts.
The badge, now framed, was placed at the main entrance. And there, among the metal trophies, a piece of cardboard became immortal. But not all glamour is immediately accepted. Behind the scenes, murmurs of dissatisfaction began to grow. Some employees said the project was too sentimental. Others thought it was unfair that the cleaning lady's son received so much attention. "This is going to be expensive for the company," they whispered in the hallways. Augusto listened to everything, without denying or refuting it. Did you know that true change is born from friction? Meanwhile, he continued implementing the new stages of the program: mentorships, scholarships, workshops for young apprentices, all inspired by a boy who just wanted to spell a name correctly. Leo visited the company every day after school. He followed the tutors, asked questions, and learned interesting things. The employees began to get used to his cheerful presence. He had a gift for asking simple questions that made people think. "Why does nobody smile much here?" he once asked, and silence answered. One afternoon, Professor Lee called him over for a chat in the garden. "When you corrected my name tag, you also corrected my courage." Leo laughed, finding it beautiful, but without fully understanding it. "One day you will teach this to others," the professor added, and the boy kept those words as if they were a sacred secret. Meanwhile, an emergency meeting was taking place between the directors. Some wanted to suspend the program, citing unnecessary costs. But Augusto entered unexpectedly, calm as a tide that is not to be feared. "Costs?" he repeated. "The greatest cost is losing our soul." And he ended the discussion with a look that needed no further explanation. The next day, a surprise took over the company. Newspapers and social media reported on the Name and Value program. Articles praised the corporation's sensitivity and its new human model. The hashtag #MeoMai Tem Valor has become a national trend. The resistance suddenly paled in comparison to public recognition. Leo watched the news on television, unable to believe it. "Look, Mom, Professor Lee is on TV." Donna Maria laughed, unable to contain the pride in her heart. "And the boy who made the name tag, too," said the reporter. Leo covered his face, embarrassed and happy at the same time.
Augusto, at home, watched the same news report in silence. I felt a lump in my throat and a new sparkle in my eyes. He picked up his cell phone, opened his contacts, and hesitated for a few seconds. Then finally, he dialed his son, whom he hadn't seen in years. "Hi, son. It's your father. Can we talk for a bit?" On the other end of the line, a surprised voice replied, "Of course, Dad." Augusto smiled, tears welling in his eyelashes. "I want to tell you a story about a boy and a name tag." And so, Amidst names and reconciliations, the project took on a new meaning. Because sometimes, fixing a badge is just the beginning of fixing lives. The auditorium was more beautiful than ever. Colorful panels decorated the stage with employees' names hand-painted on them. There were children, parents, teachers, and even former employees in the audience. It was the big recognition event for Project Name and Value. And in the center of the stage, a framed name tag gleamed under the light. Augusto stepped onto the stage with firm steps, but with an emotional look in his eyes. Today we celebrate something that cannot be bought. Respect, he began. He told the story of the boy who saw the mistake and corrected it with love. Each word carried simplicity, yet resonated like poetry. Leo in the front row listened with his heart racing. This badge represents more than just a correct name, the CEO continued. It represents the courage to do the right thing even when no one is watching. Donna Maria discreetly wiped away her tears, proud and grateful. The attentive audience seemed to see a reflection of themselves in the child, a reminder that empathy is the language everyone understands. "Leo," Augusto called, extending his hand. "Want to come up here with me?" The boy froze for a second before being jolted away by applause. He went up timidly, stumbling on the red carpet with a nervous smile. The microphone looked gigantic next to her flushed face. But when he spoke, silence fell over the auditorium. "I just wanted to help the young man not to be sad," he said simply. "Because my name has been misspelled before, and I know how much it hurts." The words flowed without rehearsal, clean as fresh rain. The audience held their breath, and the sound of applause came slowly and sincerely. Even the simultaneous translator rubbed his eyes, trying to hide it. Augusto placed his hand on Leo's shoulder and smiled. "You taught me more than any MBA could, kid." The gentle laughter eased the tension, but the weight of the moment remained. At that moment, hierarchies dissolved and humanity triumphed. The applause that followed seemed endless. After the speech, Professor Lee was invited to the stage. She was carrying her original badge and a yellow flower in her hands. "In China, yellow is the color of friendship and wisdom," he explained. She handed the flower to Leo and hugged him silently. There, two worlds met and spoke the same language. The cameras captured the scene and broadcast it live. Thousands of people watched online, deeply moved. Comments, hearts, and messages flooded social media. A boy reminded the world of the value of a name. The video would soon transcend borders and languages. At the end of the event, the audience rose to their feet in applause. Some were crying, others were smiling with tears in their eyes. Donna Maria, motionless, simply watched, trying to believe it. When Leo came down from the stage, she hugged him tightly. "My son, you gave hope a name." The following days were filled with joy and double the work. The project grew, gaining traction in other branches and countries. Panels with employees' names were placed throughout the company. Each one featured colors, phrases, and the story behind each name. The building, once cold, now seemed to breathe humanity. Professor Lee led the Power of Names campaign. He recorded short videos telling stories about the meaning of names. From Maria to Takeshi, from Aisha to Joao, each sound was a universe.
People started greeting each other more carefully, and saying the correct name became a symbol of respect and pride. Leo continued to visit the company with his school backpack. Now, he was helping the designers make colorful name tags for everyone. She drew flowers, stars, and letters full of life. "Each color is a way of remembering that we exist," she said. And the adults listened to him as one listens to a wise man in disguise. Donna Maria, once invisible, was now greeted by everyone. "Good morning, Mrs. Maria," the executive said in the elevator. She still got emotional every time she heard her full name. It was as if the world had finally learned how to pronounce it. "My name has value," she repeated to herself, silently.
The CEO, in turn, had become a different man. He had set aside the dark suit and the rehearsed speeches. She walked lightly through the corridors, chatting with the employees. "A good leader starts by calling people by their names," he said. And this time, he truly believed what he was saying. The program has won awards for social and human innovation, but what moved Augusto the most was seeing the subtle effects. People started smiling more, listening more, and being more grateful. Respect had become the company's official language, and it all began with a child in worn-out sneakers and a pure heart. One afternoon, Leo met Professor Lee in the inner courtyard. The sun filtered through the windows, and yellow flowers adorned the garden. "Did you know all this was going to happen?" the boy asked. Lee laughed softly, adjusting her glasses. "No, Leo, but I knew that the right names attract the right destinies." While they talked, Augusto watched from afar, smiling. In that unlikely trio, the CEO, the professor, and the cleaning lady's son, this was a summary of what every company should be: humanity, empathy, and learning in their purest forms. The framed badge at the entrance shone like a silent beacon. At the end of the workday, a new mural was unveiled. It was called "The Flowers and the Names," and it featured photos of all the employees. Each name was surrounded by drawings made by Leo and other children. In the center, a phrase: "Every name carries a story. Every story deserves respect." And below it, the signature in childish handwriting: "Leo, 10 years old." The years passed like pages slowly turned. Yellow flowers still decorated the company's courtyard. The Name and Value project had spread to other nations. And the cardboard name tag remained there at the main entrance, intact. A colorful reminder that humanity is found in the smallest actions. Now an adult, Leo was walking down those same corridors again. The translator's uniform replaced the worn-out sneakers of childhood. The name tag hanging on his chest read in elegant lettering, "Leo Alves, Performer." The wall seemed to recognize him, as if greeting an old friend. He stopped in front of the picture frame where it all began. Behind the glass, the slightly faded cardboard still shone. The name Mr. Lee, written in colored marker, seemed to smile at him. Next to it, a small golden plaque read, "A gesture of respect can change the world." The sound of footsteps made him turn around. It was Professor Lai, now the company's director of cultural relations. The same calm gaze, the same gentle smile. "Leo?" he called, opening his arms. Their hug was long, full of memories and gratitude. "You've grown up," said the teacher, smiling with his eyes. "And you continue teaching, Mr. Lai," Leo replied, smiling. They walked together to the new event hall. The walls were covered with colorful name tags made by children, each one with a different story, and they all begin with the name. On stage, the new CEO, a young man who graduated from the program itself, was giving a speech. "It all started 10 years ago with a boy and a name tag." Applause echoed, and Leo, in the back of the audience, felt tears welling up in his eyes. That place was no longer just a company. It was a reflection of the lesson he had left for the world. After the event, Augusto, already retired, approached with a smile. Her gray hair and serene gaze showed that she had lived a full life. "I knew you'd come back, Leo," he said emotionally, "but I didn't know it would bring so much light back with you." Leo shook his hand and replied, "You're part of this too." Before leaving, he passed by the entrance one more time. The yellow flowers were alive, lovingly cared for. A group of children from the new program were drawing name tags on the ground. One of them called out to him, "Young man, how do you spell your name correctly?" Leo smiled, knelt, and replied, "With care and truth." The sun was setting behind the building, tinging the sky with gold. The wind played with the leaves and made the flowers sway. Leo looked at the framed name tag one last time before leaving. He touched the glass with his fingertips and whispered, "Thank you." And he left, taking with him the certainty that respect also has a name. On the wall, the reflection of the name tag shone one last time, not because of the light, but because of the history it held. A boy who taught an entire company to remember who people are. It's a small gesture that has stood the test of time without losing its color, because love, like a name, never fades.
One badge, one gesture, and an entire life transformed. If this story reminded you that every name has value, give your gesture a name too. Subscribe to the channel and share this video, because when we spread stories like this, the world learns to call love by its right name.